Questions for reflection. Our first reading for today's Mass is rich with allegorical meaning and was the favorite of many writings of reflection in the Christian tradition. It is the familiar story of the faith of Abraham and the test which he endured and which he passed. That test showed the depth of the faith of this man called our Father in faith in the canon of the Holy Mass. He knew what the Lord had promised in giving Isaac to he and Sarah so late in life. But more importantly, he put his faith in the Lord of that promise. Centuries later, God would send his own son, Jesus, who would carry the wood for the sacrifice up another mountain and willingly become the very Lamb of sacrifice, obtaining salvation for all who place their faith in him. Citing several biblical passages, the Catechism of the Catholic Church explains, and I quote, "The letter to the Hebrews, in its great eulogy of the faith of Israel's ancestors, lays special emphasis on Abraham's faith. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place which he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was to go. By faith, he lived as a stranger and pilgrim in the promised land. By faith, Sarah was given to conceive the son of the promise. And by faith, Abraham offered his only son in sacrifice. Abraham thus fulfills the definition of faith in Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Abraham believed God, and it was reckoned to him as righteousness. Because he was strong in his faith, Abraham became the father of all who believe." End quote. In our second reading, the end of chapter 8 of St. Paul's letter to the Romans, the apostle reminds us that God is for us. He held nothing back. He gave us his only son. Do you believe that God is for you? Do you call on him in times of trouble? Do you believe what the apostle wrote in the first verses of this 8th chapter? And I quote, "There is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. For the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus has set me free from the law of sin and death. For God has done what the law, weakened by the flesh, could not do, sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh. And for sin, he condemned sin in the flesh, in order that the just requirement of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walk not according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit." And that's Romans 8, verses 1-4. The gospel for today's Holy Mass is St. Mark's account of the transfiguration of the Lord. From the earliest centuries, the Church emphasized the centrality of the transfiguration of the Lord in the Christian life and the plan of God for the whole human race. Our experience of our life in the Lord now is only the beginning of what is to come in the kingdom. However, our life is already a participation in that new reality right now. The Church, in the words of the Fathers of the Second Vatican Council, is a seed of the kingdom to come. And our life within the Church is actually a participation in the eternal realities of the life to come, in a new heaven and a new earth. Yes, the Transfiguration was meant to strengthen the disciples for the coming Passion, but it was also meant to help them enter more deeply into the meaning of the Christian life. We too will be transfigured. In fact, the process has already begun.